first, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello everyone, this is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thank you very much for joining us. We are live streaming here out of the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom as we do every weekday. We start around 1 o'clock and we go throughout the afternoon. We cover, as I mentioned, a wide range of topics here on this show. Today we are talking about the findings from the Portland Central City Task Force Tax Advisory Group, about some of the findings they had regarding the Central City and some ways to revitalize it in a number of different aspects. We're going to talk about some of that right now because this report just came out. We want to give you the information on what this report actually is, what the goal was, what the findings were, and then what some of these recommendations are. So it's several different things there. To do so, we're joined right now by John Tapogna, who's the public policy advisor for this. And John, thank you very much for joining us here. I really appreciate you having some time to talk to us about this and to go through this and really get a better understanding of what this report actually is. So to start off, would you mind just giving us the backstory of this, of how this report came about and really was put together?
You bet. Yeah. So it really goes back. It goes back a couple of years. The governor convened Central City Task Force back in August of 2023. And you might remember back in that time, there were sort of 10 big recommendations that came out. Some of those led into state legislation on recriminalization of controlled substances downtown. There was some action with state police in downtown to sort of stabilize conditions, a fentanyl emergency and things of that kind. One of those recommendations came out of a tax committee. And back in 2023, the tax committee said a couple of things. They said, first of all, there should be a 3-year moratorium on taxes in Portland and Multnomah County, because there had been some pretty sizable increases in taxation beginning in 2018 and through the pandemic. So there should be a pause there. And then the second thing they asked for was a group to come together and take a much more in-depth look. And so this is the product of that tax advisory group, that more in-depth look at taxes and services in Portland.
Okay, so that's what this report is that came out here. And I guess going through that, there's a lot of things to analyze, and obviously it's taken a couple of years to go through a lot of this information. So for that, what were some of the biggest findings that you would say came out of this?
Yeah, so it was teed up. You've got the report that was released today. It had sort of a predecessor report that was released in January called 19 Facts About the Economy, the Fiscal Situation, and the like. And it was sort of looking at those factual conditions that sort of led to these options. So some of the things that the tax advisory group was concerned about is that you did have a very sizable increase in taxes. So Portland businesses between 2019 and 2023 saw an 82% increase in taxation. You had the voter-approved passing of 2 local income taxes, which is a relatively rare thing across the country. You tend to have property taxes and sales taxes at a local level. It's not as common to come across income taxes at a local level, and so you had those pass as well, and then you sort of at the same time you see these sizable increases in taxation, you've got some problems on the service side as well. So you've got increased taxes, but we also had increases in police response times, relative to pre-pandemic. We obviously have, a sizable increase in unsheltered homelessness and one of the higher rates in the country, and road conditions that are not well maintained. And so it was with those as sort of background, the group then said, okay, if you're going to try to deal with some of that, what are some of your options? And these are, you've actually used the term recommendations on here. The term that they use in here is options. We want to put options out there for folks to consider.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, so options, not recommendations, but options that can be considered. And so I'm sorry to go into those, what were some of those options?
Yeah, so they fall into sort of 3 major categories. The first category really had to do with kind of preventing problems in the future. So I think the group came to, I'm not going to call it a consensus, but there was sort of agreement that voters needed more information about measures that were in front of them than they had received in the recent past. So, for example, if you take a look at the Portland Clean Energy Fund, those that were supporting that measure originally thought it was going to generate about $30 million a year. Counter estimates thought, oh, maybe it's going to be $70 or $80 million a year. It generated in excess of $200 million this year. So spending some time and especially for tax measures and doing a little bit more upfront work to let the voters know explicitly, this is what we expect is going to be collected, and here's how we think the spending is going to unveil itself. We'll get this much this year, we're going to spend that much, we'll put this much aside, et cetera, and just sort of show the financial path. Because with each of these three new big measures that were passed, the Portland Clean Energy Fund, the Preschool for All, and the Supportive Housing Services measure, I think the group's view was that voters deserve to know more than they were originally given about these measures. So there's recommendations around how might you pull together a citizen advisory explanatory commission like they have at the state level, where you'd have proponents and opponents to the measure. Agree on language that would go before the voters. That would be an idea. There is already an existing tax supervising committee in Multnomah County. It's the only one in the state that already exists, and charge them with doing some of this math on what do we think these tax measures are going to raise. Some in the group, not all, were in favor of potentially raising the percentage of voters you would need to collect signature from to get something onto the ballot. So it's in that space. That first category is around how do we get better, more rigorous information in front of voters as they're thinking about sizable tax and spending measures. So that's category one. Then category two is, what, if anything, might we want to do about the measures that are already out there, and very specifically, the three bigger ones that have been passed since 2018. So in the case I sort of mentioned recently, the Portland Clean Energy Fund, that one was expected to collect somewhere between $30 and $90 million a year. It's recently approaching $220 million. The city has already made some moves to say, well, we know we have a whole lot more money than we anticipated. So sort of the original voter approved activities that we have, which was a lot of grant making and very specific climate related investments, we're going to do all of those. But we still probably have money left over. So we're going to send that money to the bureaus in the city. But that spending needs to be related to climate in some way, to be aligned with the voters' intent. And so one of the recommendations here is, okay, you thought you're going to have about 90 to 100. You've got more than 100 in addition to that. What if you went back to the voters and said, look, we're not going to lower the taxes, but might you want to apply that 100 more flexibly to the city's deficit and other general fund activities that are not climate related? Because clearly what you thought you passed back in 2018 we've ended up with much more money than we originally anticipated. So might we use that additional money in a different way? So that's the Clean Energy Fund option. Then do you have a question?
Well, just for that one. So you're talking about sending this back to the voters for an actual vote on what do you want to do with these excess funds?
I think so. I think that there was a little bit of a debate as to whether the city council and the mayor could do that on their own, without going back to the voters, but it would probably be challenged in court. So there was some debate as to whether city council could do that on their own. So the idea here was, let's just get ahead of that and refer it back to the voters and see what their perspective is. Explain what happened, explain these resources here. Obviously, the city just went through a bruising budget debate. So ask voters, might you want to use this unanticipated $120 million in ways that are outside that original PSEF framework?
So when you're looking at all of these different options that are out there, options and then recommendations, you see a lot of these, but to pass any of these options, to actually put these options into action, into legislation, whatever it may be, what are the chances of these getting through, and what would it actually take?
Yeah, well, everyone is a little bit different. In some of these cases, just the existing framework or legislation would allow a commission, Multnomah County Commission or the Portland City Council, to act on their own. So, for example, you can see right now, and this relates to one of these options, Multnomah County commissioners are considering indexing the tax brackets that are associated with the preschool for all tax. I think the vote might be coming up this week. So there is some flexibility in some of these measures for those elected officials to act on their own. In other cases, like I said with PSEF, if you're really sort of moving away from what voters approved, it probably makes most sense to ask the voters what they think about that.
So each one has a different, different hurdles and obstacles to go through to get them into implementation. But with the combination of these, you feel that, to understand, you feel that these different options, if implemented, would be enough to revitalize that central city core district right there. Is that correct in asking that, or please clarify if that's not correct?
Right, and you've got 20 options in here. You certainly wouldn't deploy all of them, because some of them are actually, if you're going to do number 14, you don't need to do number 15, that kind of thing. But certainly there's enough in here in terms of ideas that if a thoughtful combination of 7 or 8 of them were implemented, I think the view of the tax advisory group is that they're big and bold enough that you could change the trajectory of the downtown economy and the county's economy, for that matter.
So now that this is out here, what is the next step for these recommendations? Now that they're out for the public to obviously review, for businesses to review, for legislators to review. But what comes next?
Yeah, what comes next? I would imagine a thoughtful discussion. So the tax advisory group will certainly make itself available to talk through its rationale and how it landed on where it did. And there's any number of venues, be it in front of City Council or the County Commission or the Metro Council with respect to the Supportive Housing Services measure, et cetera. Prosper Portland has a number of interesting concepts in here as well. That was sort of one category that I didn't quite get to, which is there's some here that are spending exercises where you've got tax revenue and maybe you give some tax breaks to businesses that decide to get a lease downtown and stay in downtown, or other kinds of incentives to accelerate the recovery in downtown Portland.
Have you heard any feedback from any of these, again, I guess legislative bodies, whether it be City Council, Multnomah County Commission, any of those organizations that could directly pick up one of these options, as far as feedback from them to you about the possibility of taking up any one of these?
This was released 2 hours ago. So
Fair enough. I didn't know if there was any behind the scenes, whether they were involved in this in any way, but yeah, fair enough. 2 hours ago.
Certainly,
So we'll wait.
All the major programs that I've described, representatives from those programs came and described the program. They described the taxing mechanism. They described the kinds of things that they were considering in their management, and so we certainly had interaction with all the major players.
So it kind of seems like now it's, as you mentioned, discussion. These are out there. Think about them. We'll see what kind of feedback we get from every organization that would actually have the ability to implement this, whether that's going back to the voters or whether that's a commission or a council or whatever it may be.
Yeah, or even just direct action. In some of these cases, these are things that, if somebody sees a good idea here and wants to adopt it and push it through a legislative process, they could do it.
Gotcha. All right. Well, for everybody out there who wants to find out more about this, what's the best way for them to go and review it themselves?
If you Google Portland Central City Task Force, you'll find a landing page, and you can pull the full report down.
All right, there we go. And I believe actually we have it at kptv.com now that I mentioned it. It is 2 hours old, so I'm still catching up on it too. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, John. I really appreciate you joining us here to walk through this and get a little bit of a better understanding of what this is. And now it really sounds like it's time for everybody to take some time and read through all of these and understand what some of these options are and what they could do for the city. John, thank you very much for joining us here on Fox 12 Now.
Thanks for having me.
And for everybody watching again, this is, as I mentioned, Fox 12 Now. We're live streaming here. This is something we do every weekday. We get to have longer form discussions like this, and sometimes they're informative, learning more about different things that could be affecting the lives of people all over the region. Sometimes we're learning about events. Sometimes we're doing deeper dives on stories that you've heard on our other shows as well. So lots to cover. You can watch that all on the Fox 12 Oregon app under the Fox 12 Now tab. But we're going to take a break. I will be back here throughout the afternoon. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.